39 right now,
Okay.
attendees.
Okay. So Willie, similarly as we do in our Jacobs meetings, why don't we go ahead and get started? Maybe by the time we get through the safety moment, we'll be about where we need to be.
Okay. Yes, sir. Then I'm gonna go ahead and start with the safety moment. I'll jump past the agenda and we'll come back.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I'll go kick us off, but I would say by the time we get through about the first 3 slides, maybe folks will be on. So let me kick it off. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Washington. I am the principal in charge for the Jacobs Ewing Cole joint venture team on this contract. We're excited at Jacobs and Ewing Cole to host this virtual event. It'll be a first of kind for me. And I used to go into many industry forums and having the opportunity to meet small businesses, but we're going to try to perfect and use this platform because it has such power to bring us together virtually and allow us to save some of our very precious time. So next slide, please, Willie. So here's the agenda we're going to cover today. And again, my colleague Willie Franklin and I on the screen will be the primary presenters, and we'll go back and forth through the slide deck. And at the end of the presentation, we'll take your questions if you have them. So real quick, again, our primary focus points today is to go through NAVFAC, our client in NAVFAC Southwest. We'll talk about our joint venture, the contract that we're going to focus on today. We'll show you some project examples that we've delivered for this client. We'll touch on a big program that we have going called the China Lake Earthquake Response Program. Get into the meat of the presentation, which is what opportunities we see to share with small businesses as well as our small business program. I'd like to acknowledge our hosts today, Jackie and Torin Peterson. They're giving us this platform through BidConnectUSA, and again, we hope that this is going to be a platform that we can use to do many more events like this. And it is notable to mention that they are a small business, women-owned, a very type of firm that we want to work with to share the opportunities that we're fortunate to have with this Navy client.
Good morning, everyone.
Great.
Next slide, please, Willie.
Okay. So I'm gonna jump in and talk. Good morning, everyone. I'm Willie Franklin. I'm the Director of Economic Inclusion and Supplier Diversity in Small Business Programs. And we always start out our meetings with a culture of caring moment, and we talk about safety. And so I want to talk to you today about holiday stress, because as of today, you have 29 days left until Thanksgiving, and you have exactly 63 days to get your Christmas shopping done. And as with most of us, holiday stress just builds up, and this time of year, our stress builds up. So numerous factors, including unrealistic expectations, financial pressures, excessive commitments, and family can cause stress and anxiety during the holidays. I'm one of those guilty individuals that have that happen every year. Certain people may feel anxious and depressed around the holidays, and it's called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, or seasonal depression. It's a real term. I didn't make it up, and it's a true statement. The symptoms are anxiety, sadness, headaches, body aches, inability to sleep, and irritability. And so I want to just take a few minutes and talk about how we can reduce that holiday stress. And so the things that I picked up was, the first thing you do is you make a to-do list, and you check it twice. Make sure you got everything on your list, because you get it out of your head and on paper, that automatically reduces your stress. Don't wait until the last minute to do things. So if you see that one item you need to buy it now. So if you ever watched the movie Jingle All the Way, there was this toy that was out there. It was called Turbo Man, and they were stressing out because they wanted to get this toy, right? And so their anxiety was so built up so high because they couldn't get this toy. So don't wait till last minute to buy your items. Start shopping now. Decorate like a minimalist. Get rid of cluster before Christmas. Ask your friends and family for help. Instead of everybody coming to your house and you're making, your wife and you are making all the food up there, host it as a potluck. Have people bring stuff in. Try to stay healthy as much as possible during the holidays. Avoid too many commitments. Make a budget and stick to it. I'm very guilty of not sticking to that. Don't spend all your time on social media. Don't shop at peak times like the day before Christmas. I'm guilty for that one as well. Avoid family conflict. You don't overeat, and make time for downtime. And just remember what these holiday seasons is about. It's about family and you just reconnecting with yourself and life. So thank you, Jake. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please, Willie.
Yes, sir.
Most early at the beginning, what I wanted to say on this slide, but a couple things that I want to add at this point is we are in a joint venture. So Willie and I, with Jacobs, our partner firm, Ewing Cole, they were not able to join us on the call unless maybe someone had joined at last moment. But we are a joint venture, just regrettably, we're not able to have them speak. So I'll speak to some slides related to that joint partner. Also, I did want to acknowledge in the audience, Steve Meshberger is on. He is a key procurement professional with Jacobs, and I've worked with Steve for about the last 7 years, and we've done a lot of work together, figuring out how to bring small businesses into our projects. And so Steve will be a key player in how we go forward, working with Willie and I and others to bring the program into fruition and to grow our small business pool. Next slide, please.
And Jake, before you go for any further, so I just want to let the audience know, if you have questions, please start writing them down now. Start typing them into your information queue there. And at the end of our presentation, we'll start answering all these questions. And for those questions that we don't get a chance to answer, we are going to have the questions and it will post the answers to every question. So you have a full list of all the questions and answers at the end of this presentation, or within our follow-up time to get back to you. So thank you, Jake. Back to you.
Yeah, and I know as many of you may be familiar with working with the Department of Defense, the federal government, there's a lot of acronyms. And so if I have any acronyms in here that may not be familiar, I'll try to speak to them. And the primary one is just our client, NAVFAC, or Naval Facilities Engineering Command. That's NAVFAC is short for Naval Facilities. And it's a global command. And the mission primarily of NAVFAC is to be the Shore Expeditionary Systems Command. Really what they do is they do all of the planning, the design, the construction, and the maintenance of all facilities that support both the Navy and the Marine Corps around the world. And so there's probably 75 or so Navy installations, maybe 40 or so Marine Corps installations. And so from all systems in a built environment, from concept through demolition, they maintain that body of work for the military. And you can see their vision. They want to be the best at what they do, and they understand that a large part of their ability to be the technical experts in what they do is leveraged on the private community, the private AEC community, architects, engineers, and construction. So we are a major part of their ability to fulfill this mission and vision around the world. NAVFAC Southwest is headquartered in San Diego, California, and they have a geographic responsibility of 6 southwestern states, as you can see on the map, with a heavy concentration of the bases in the state of California. There's a few primary installations also in Nevada and in Arizona, you see at Yuma and at Fallon. And most of that work is associated with aviation installations, bombing ranges, airports out in the desert, as well as some desert training. And then across the bottom of the screen, I've included some pictures of some of the key major mission platforms and organizations that NAVFAC Southwest supports. The first one to the far left is the Navy SEALs. They support, again, the SEALs around the world. We do a lot of critical facilities for them, some highly classified. And next is the Marine Corps, huge Marine Corps presence here in the Southwest, centered around Camp Pendleton and 29 Palms, and then on the East Coast around Camp Lejeune area. The third picture is a Joint Strike Fighter. That's the new 5th generation strike fighter, that the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marine Corps are all flying that jet. There will be, as well as there's a lot of sales being made to our allied nations around the world. So this is the most modern aircraft in the world inventory right now. And we are doing a major bed down for that, both for the Marine Corps at Yuma, Arizona, and Miramar, California, and for the Navy at Lemoore, California, and Fallon, Nevada. The next platform is the V-22 Osprey with the rotors turned up. So again, a major bed down going on for that platform at North Island here in San Diego, California. The next two slides are UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicle systems. The first one is a attack drone, and the one next to it is a refueler drone. And we're doing major bed downs for both of those systems north of Los Angeles at Naval Air Station, Point Mugu, California. And then lastly, the carriers, the Pacific carriers are headquartered here in San Diego, and we're doing a lot of work, piers and waterfront work associated with carriers as well as other types of surface ships. And clearly, again, a little bit about my background. Prior to joining Jacobs about 8 years ago, I was an active duty naval officer. So I was active for 28 years and served throughout the fleet and also significantly within NAVFAC. So I know the command very well. Next slide. Okay, and so here's a little bit about the history of the Jacobs Ewing Cole joint venture. Initiated in about 2016 on the East Coast. We have some Army Corps of Engineer contracts supporting the North Atlantic Division, supported out of Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New York. And that team has won a number of successful contracts. So you can see the capacity, about 63 million so far. And in 2017, when we were going for this big contract in the Southwest, kind of late in the game, the client expanded the size of the contract. It was initially meant to be $3 million contracts, i.e. they were going to make 3 awards to 3 different primes. But at the last minute, they decided to roll it all up and make it one contract. And this is the first contract of this size led by the Navy. And so it was a first of kind. There was a lot of efforts out there, I think, in some of the providers to joint venture, to make sure that we had the capacity and the scale and the depth of services to follow the Navy around the world and to provide this broad range of services. If you've worked with the Navy or for any of the DoD elements, you'll be familiar with the fact that they might write a contract around the geography, in this case, the Southwest, but they'll always have a rider in there that says that they can use it anywhere in the world. And so you have to be prepared, again, to take your capability anywhere in the world. And with that, you need depth, you need joint ventures, you need small business partners. And so we received a contract and award in November of 2017, as you can see. We had a slow first year, but really has ramped up very, very quickly in the last 3 to 4 months. 20 plus task orders, about 30 million is burned through just in the last few months before we had this event in the summer called the earthquakes here at China Lake. And I'll talk about that a little bit previous. But prior to our joint venture, Jacobs as a sole entity had been supporting NAVFAC Southwest continuously since about 2010. We've delivered over 100 diverse projects that support all of those missions that I previously showed you, valued in excess of about $1.5 billion. The primary rationale for our JV was the healthcare and the hospitality expertise that Ewing Cole brought to us. And early intel on the contract, there was an expectation to be a large body of healthcare work, potentially the replacement of the Naval Hospital and a number of healthcare clinics. A lot of that work is not yet materialized, but we're starting to see that grow at present. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, and it's honestly some of the data is a little bit dated or changed because, as Willie knows, our firm grows continuously. We do acquire other firms, we divest businesses, so things are changing all the time. But generally, the takeaways here, we were founded in 1947, so we've been around a long time. Our employee size fluctuates. Right now, I think we're really about 55,000. We divested a major business, which we call our ECR business, essentially our oil and gas business, which was more of hands-on trades type functions. We did a lot of upstream oil and gas. So we divested that to Worley Parsons within the last year, and more in the technical skill side of the business. About 15 billion a year is typical. We pride ourselves on a program we call Jacobs Value Plus, where we dig into every project and try to save our clients money. That's a metric from 2017 where we saved the client about $2.7 billion. And we work with them to acknowledge how to lean out costs from their projects. Also, as an environmentally conscious firm, we focus a lot on sustainability and reducing their carbon footprint. And that's what the 54.2 billion metric tons of carbon that we, through our businesses and our project development, we've been able to eliminate that impact on the environment. We're very, very proud. And I would say Jacobs, and I've been with them about 8 years, we're a pretty humble firm. We don't broadcast and brag a lot, but you know, we let our reputation stand for itself. And by the last 2 years running an engineering news record, which rates the top industry firms, we were rated #1 for the last 2 consecutive years. And that's for business volume worldwide, and also highly rated with our federal clients. You can see some of the industry sectors that we touch regularly. And just going across it, clearly we're in the defense sector. We do a lot of industrial work, environmental work, a lot of buildings, aviation, as I mentioned. And those are the major ones, power and utilities, and a lot of water and wastewater. And we got a lot of that, I would say, through the 2017 acquisition of CH2M. And if I can draw that distinction, Willie was from CH2M, and I'm Legacy Jacobs, but now we're one powerful firm that has seen, you know, the benefit of bringing our businesses together these past 2 years. And then lastly on this slide, again, as a firm of, the one in the middle there where it says Fortune 2017 admired companies, you know, that is one that I think we're really proud of, being a company of integrity with our clients and with our partners, so that you know you can trust to work with us, and we're going to treat you fairly. You know, so that's really, really important beyond the metrics of money and business, is to be a fair actor in the marketplace. And I'm very confident in saying in my 7-8 years and with my military background that this company has lived up to my expectations. Next slide. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Ewing Cole. Again, I mentioned earlier, a very capable firm. They're centered out of Philadelphia. They have a major office here in Irvine, California, which partners up with our Irvine, San Diego, and other offices to support this contract. But as you can see, they have other major offices in New York, Charlotte, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Raleigh. They are very capable and deep in healthcare, science and technology, lab development. They do a lot of sports and entertainment, casinos, water parks, and educational and cultural. They also have some federal clients before working with Jacobs. They do a lot of work with the Department of Veteran Affairs, numerous contracts with the Army Corps of Engineer districts throughout the country. And again, the power of their relationships with the USACE New York and the North Atlantic Division was the impetus for our joint venture. And we've spread a lot of that work now to partner up on the West Coast. when we joined together, we saw that they did a lot of work for the Navy Hospital at San Diego, but that was through an Army Corps contract out of USA's Huntsville. Next slide, Willie. Carrying on again, just a little bit more. You can read through the bullets. This gets really into the depth of their expertise in healthcare with acute care, ambulatory care, major campus development, medical buildings. And I've done a number of presentations with them, and we're really looking for the opportunity, and we think it's going to come fairly soon to do some work with the Naval Hospital San Diego and with a number of the clinics. And so if some of our partners out there have expertise in healthcare, we'll be looking to engage you in some of those opportunities. Next slide. So let me talk just briefly about the contract in particular and how it was set up and what we're seeing so far. Again, that's the contract number across the top. It was designed, or it was set up to be a design contract focused on large military construction projects. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with military construction, or MILCON as we call it. Those are the large projects that must be developed from the base level. They're planned at the base that they're needed, but they go up through a system that eventually goes through the headquarters of the service, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Army, and eventually into Congress. Every military construction project has to be appropriated and funded at an exacting amount by Congress, and that program's built every year. And a key role that we play, and we played recently in a lot of MILCON projects, is helping those bases define that requirement, resolving a lot of the unknown issues and geotechnical and topographic surveys and functional requirements, so that we can put a solid number up into the budget. If you do not do that, you will not get a project, because again, it's very, very tightly controlled, and it goes through a very rigorous process to make sure, again, that you know what your requirement is. And so this contract was put in place very specifically to focus on NAVFAC Southwest military construction program. And I think I can say that they have the largest military construction program in the Navy because of all those major new platforms that I mentioned. They're supporting just about every major new weapon system, every major new force realignment that's happening, not only in the Southwest, but their reach is the Pacific Rim and everything that's going on across Asia as they support other NAVFAC organizations. Tended to be full design mostly, or design bid build, or DBB as we call it, where we do the full plans and specs. Our engineers and architects are the designers of record. And then they'll take our full design and put that to acquisition and contracting, and hire a general contractor to do it. Then we do a design build, where we'll do a portion of the design, anywhere from 10 to 35% drawings and specifications. And then we'll build a lot of criteria around the rest of the requirement, such that a design build team hired by the government will then finish that design and build it as one continuum. And that's done a lot. There's various rationales. Some is for expediency or speed. Some of it is to put the risk into that team. And if you're familiar with government contracting or any significant contracting, in design bid build, sometimes if you don't have a complete set of plans and specs, there's these gaps that cause delays and change orders and slows down the process. So a lot of time they'll go to design build, and they look at every acquisition as a standalone. What's the requirement? How fast do I need it? How many unknowns are there? And that sort of thing. And then they'll decide whether they're going to do a full design or design build. And then we do a number of engineering studies just to get some of the preliminary information needed to build those program budgets, or to reduce the level of unknowns by the time they go to contract. I've listed a number of the facility types that we typically provide for the client: industrial, and a lot of wastewater treatment plants, a lot of aviation facilities, some maintenance facilities, things like that. A lot of admin buildings, office buildings, institutional would be training, classrooms, things like that. Healthcare, as I mentioned, and then RDT&E, or research, development, testing, and evaluation. A lot of laboratory type functions because, again, some of these weapon systems and things that are being done, their research has to be done, and a lot of developmental programs and things that we have to support. And then we build a lot of the laboratories and training facilities that enable that research. In 2019, or very recently, our primary contract was modified to include what's called a pre-design. We call it PDA for short. But basically, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our clients that have to build these complex programs, if they don't have the depth of planning or technical expertise at the base level, there's a risk that some projects will go up that are not fully developed. And so they modified our contract so that we can do some of that pre-design. And it's on a clock, you know, it gives us, basically speaking, from about October to March is about a 6-month window when each installation is building its MILCON program. And a lot of pre-design work is being done to make sure by March they have fully vetted, fully defensible, accurate contracts or project development documents. And so we're doing a lot of those for them now. We essentially get them in October and November. We have to finish the work by March. And again, we do geotech analysis, we do topo surveys, we meet with the users of the buildings, we figure out their programs, we take out all the unknowns, we do the costing, and then come March again, we'll say, here's your program. They send it up, and then hopefully most of them, not all of those, will meet the muster, get funded, and then we will take those straight into design for them. The next one, again, here, this has been a little bit of a curveball for us on this contract. As I mentioned, again, it was meant to be design, MILCON, buildings, and what we've seen in addition to that is a lot of the pre-design I just mentioned, as well as a lot of horizontal work, runways, aprons, a lot of infrastructural type projects, water and wastewater treatment plants have been put through the contract. And what that's done for us is, again, we fashioned our team to do full design buildings. And this is an architect-led contract. I'm an architect by license. But again, we've had to introduce, and again, even we expect this because we've worked with the client. We know the work varies. But there's been quite a bit of differentiation that we not necessarily expected. And so we're expanding the utilization through the contract. We're bringing in a lot of other in-house resources from various offices, and we're looking to, key to today, expand into grow our small business pool to bring in more capabilities that address some of the changes we've seen in the body of work from what we expected it to be. And then lastly, that the capacity and the period of performance, or the POP as we call it, $99 million, 5 years, awarded in November of 17 through November of 22. Next slide, please. So I just got a couple slides in here. These are just kind of pictures to show some of the things we have done and are doing. This is probably one of the most high visibility programs we've supported for the last 3 or 4 years. All 4 of these projects are at Naval Air Station, Lemoore, California, which is the bed down site for all of the Navy F-35 strike fighters that I showed you the picture of earlier. The picture up in the upper left corner there is a joint facility that we designed and built. The larger portion of that building is a jet engine test facility. And they truck in these F-35 engines, they store them in racks, they can test them, and then they can move them out and pull a whole engine out of a plane and plug in a new one and make sure it's ready to go. And then a smaller portion of that building is a pilot fit test facility. Basically, they manufacture the helmets and the flight suits and the survival gear and all of that for the pilots in the building. You know, these helmets alone cost over $500,000, and they're custom fitted to the pilot's head. And when they build these and when they fly in formation, it's amazing that essentially you link 4 people together, they can see through their airplane, and they can essentially operate as one entity in the fight. So very state-of-the-art facility. Actually put that one in for American Institute of Architects Award, and hopefully we'll see that manifest. Over to the right is Hangar 6. That's the first new hangar built at Lemoore since the 1950s. And that was a design build RFP. So we did up to 35% design, and currently being built. They hired a design builder. So they're taking our early design and our criteria and finishing that work. I think it was recently awarded. I don't know who the firm is. The one at the bottom is you can see the similarity because of the look of the hangar and the somewhat historic nature of the base. The new hangars were made to look like the old ones, and they wanted to keep that character because they think that defines the base. But the one in the lower right is actually a renovation of an existing hangar there. There's 3 bays in there, so we did a phased delivery of each bay so that the first planes that arrived could start doing maintenance. So we worked on that project for about 3 years, a bay at a time, as squadrons showed up, to give them our initial capability while we planned and designed the new hangars. And so this Hangar 6, as I said, was just started, and there's another one in planning that we're working on. And then the lower right is, there was an existing F-18, which is a different fighter simulator build in there. So we did build an addition onto that to put F-35 simulators in there, as well as some classrooms for the F-35. So that's a 10-year program, about $800 million. We're about probably 30–40% into that, and we'll be working there again for several more years until we run out from under a contract. Next slide. And this one's a little more diverse, a little bit of from various places. The one in the upper left is a historic laboratory at China Lake, again, hit by the earthquakes. So we finished this project about a year ago. It's currently in construction. Thankfully, this wing of the Michelson lab, as it's called, was not damaged, so that project is continuing. But this is a massive, massive building with about 10 wings. Some other parts were damaged, so part of our China Lake program will be working on the wings that were damaged. To the top right is a Triton hangar. The Triton is the attack drone or the UAV that I mentioned. We are doing this hangar. This is just a concept design. I was actually at Point Magoo yesterday working with our teams up there and with the client. We're doing about 3 hangars as well as some trainers and simulators, you know, to bed down these UAV systems at Point Magoo. And a lot of that is in pre-design, early design. Probably next summer timeframe will we expect to really get into detailed design. Lower right is a corrosion control hangar. Again, this one is near design build RFP complete. So I think December, January, we'll be submitting a final DB RFP, as we call it. And then they'll put that out to a design builder again to finish the design and then to build it. But that essentially to strip down and do what they call depot level maintenance, you know, breaking airplanes down, repainting them, reconfiguring them. That's where the overhaul capability for Pacific aircraft, a lot of that's done in North Island. So there's a lot of facilities like that. And then the one to the lower right, it's just an interior shot, but this is kind of near and dear to my heart as an old surface warfare officer, a ship driver. Yeah, there was some, a couple of years ago, or within the last 18 months or so, there was several very prominent Navy collisions of Navy ships at sea. Might have saw some of that in the news. Eventually 17 sailors were lost in 2 or 3 accidents, which caused the Navy to rethink how they train sailors. And so we were asked in very short order to come in and design 2 facilities, one in Norfolk and one in San Diego, to create this virtual simulation training facility to train seagoing sailors in the life cycle of, how to be. Imagine your sons and daughters, 19, 20 years old, entrusted at sea with a capital ship, sailing through the night, encountering all sorts of risks and hazards. Are they properly trained to handle that responsibility and to have the lives of hundreds of sailors in their hands? I think that was hard looked at, and the answer came back no. And so we're on a very fast track to deliver these facilities. This one in San Diego actually is design complete. We finished that about 3 or 4 months ago. And now, again, that one's starting into construction right now. The one in Norfolk is a little bit behind, due primarily to they didn't have a building that they could fit it into. So that one's new construction. The one in San Diego we were able to adapt it into an existing facility on the waterfront. Next slide. And so real quick, this is just a quick slide on China Lake. If you guys are aware, it was in the news right around the 4th of July. I think on the 3rd and the 4th on consecutive days, there were 2 earthquakes at China Lake. Caused a lot of damage. China Lake is a very important facility for the Navy. That's where most of the aviation ordnance is developed and tested, along with some other things. There's some metrics I've heard. China Lake as a base is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. I think it's the largest single land holding in the U.S. Navy and a center of aviation weapons research. So very, very important. Hundreds of buildings out there. Our scope, it was primarily to address the buildings that were damaged beyond repair. They had to be demolished and rebuilt. So we're working on that scope. We have recently, since from July until about a couple of weeks ago, our focus was on those program documents I mentioned called 1391s. We developed a number of those around the most critical facilities. We're working continuously with the Navy to defend those up to Congress. And again, as I mentioned, this is out of cycle because obviously the earthquake was not anticipated, but the mission is so important that you can't wait for budget cycles. You got to define your requirement, you have to defend it, you have to ask for supplemental funds to try to address that. So that process is going on, and we're doing a lot of the engineering that will help them have defensible projects. And and right now we're moving some of those projects into DBRFP development. I've mentioned that term a lot. And in this case, due to expediency, there's not enough time to try to fully design all these buildings. So there's going to be a lot of design build RFP development, which will go into follow-on design build teams. And of course, we'll be conflicted out of that for the effort that we've provided to define the requirement. And we've done a lot of master planning to help not just build exactly what they had before the earthquake to help, but to use the opportunity to make some smart decisions on, fixing things or relocating things or creating synergies up there between buildings that they would elsewise not have had the opportunity to do. We've already engaged a number of small businesses, some of them are on our prime contract, others who work with the client or had some aspect that helped us get going faster. We've done that, and we've briefed this locally to the extent of what we are able to share. And so I think that's about all we can say. I think now Southwest has gone out and made it clear that they will use what's known as the global contingency contract to award some of the construction, and then they'll do some standalone awards. We get to offer some thoughts into that, but that's solely up to the Navy for the decisions that they make. Next slide. And so here's some of the skill sets and the capabilities that we had in our initial flyer and that we'll be looking for. Again, this is an architecture-centric contract as originally planned. all of the initial project managers requested were architects, but that's changed dramatically with the runways and the aprons and the water treatment plants. But still, we will be looking for architecture. We have that in multiple offices in Jacobs, but we also always look for an opportunity to share and deepen and find small business partners. The CVS, or the Certified Value Specialist, is somewhat of a specialty that we are looking for. We need a lot more of that. And in my experience, the Army Corps, I think, has traditionally done this more than the Navy. And to bring in a CVS, which is a credential position, as those who hold it know better than I. But essentially, as you're developing and designing a project, a CVS is brought in as a professional facilitator, and they'll work with the client and work with the design team and help lean out unnecessary costs so that that project goes in with its requirement with nothing else. Because if you take it from the congressional standpoint, when there's hundreds of projects flowing in and some gonna make the cut and some are not, you don't want any projects that are fat or don't have the requirement defined, because it's potentially pushing something else off the table. And if you're the owner of that project, you run a very high risk of your project getting thrown out because it wasn't lean, it wasn't well defined. So that CVS is NAVFAC starting to use that more. We're seeing that language in our RFPs. We have some in-house, but not enough. And sometimes what I try to do, working with the teams under me, our regional project managers and our project level project managers, is to try to find a capability that's as closest to the point of need as possible and not flying people 3,000 miles. You know, sometimes I'd rather hire a sub-consultant in Southern California than to bring a Jacobs person from DC. I mean, because I'm trying to think for the client. If I can, give them a better value and someone who's really right there integrated with the team, that's what I would prefer to do. Civil engineering, I mentioned as some of the requirements in these runways and aprons and other projects that we've developed. We see a need to grow our civil engineering pool. We have some on our prime contract. We have some capability in our firm, obviously. But again, I think that's a growth area and an area to bring in some sub-consultants to support us. Cost estimating is always huge. And with the current project demand, there is some stressors on our in-house capability. We do have a couple great small business cost estimating firms that are working with us now, but we always need more. And so I hope we can find some capability there. Electrical engineering, again, an area I think we definitely need some help in. Geotech, we do have a very strong internal geotech team. And again, I'll say that largely came through the CH2M acquisition. Prior to that, and again, I've ran this contract since 2012. I used to outsource most of the geotech, and now I balance it about 50-50 because we can do it in-house. But again, we've engaged some great small business geotech firms. We have no intention to stop doing that. And what I'm trying to do is give my project managers options, and so that we can be smart in the way we balance and utilize resources and, keep the work at a decent pace and capacity for everyone. Fire protection is always a hard to find and skill set. And again, when I was in NAVFAC, I recall just trying to, group up and utilize the fire protection capability we had inside of NAVFAC. And then out in the private sector, again, I would just say that is a area where we constantly need to find and grow our team, and especially including our small business team. Interior design, again, I've personally been engaged in growing Jacobs' interior design practice here in the Southwest. Just relocated a couple folks from the East Coast to help become the anchor of that. That's growing. Ewing Cole has a nice interior design practice. But again, the work there's plenty of work to bring in small firms to work with us and bring that expertise. Similarly, again, on down the line, mechanical, plumbing, we need all those. We have them, but we need more. And so we're hoping that some of your firms can bring that to us. topo survey, some huge footprints out there. We're having a survey, a lot out in remote areas, desert, things like that. Again, we got a strong in-house capability in Jacobs that we got through an acquisition about 3 or 4 years ago. But again, the demand often, you know, is more than they can handle, or at least causes us to make decisions I'd rather not have to make. And so looking for help as well in the topo survey. And again, I used to outsource quite a bit of that, have an option to do a lot in-house, but always looking for more civil firms and site engineering and topo firms. Next slide, Willie. I'll pass over to you at this point.
All right, thank you. So guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about the small business program. And so I always tell small businesses to vet the large business corporations you want to work with. And so what I want to try to do is try to give you some comfort that we are small business driven. We have small business in mind when we do these procurements. And Jake has talked a lot about how he's utilizing small businesses, and I just want to help confirm that statement he's making. So first, we do have a Jacobs small business commitment that in the performance of U.S. federal contracts, that all small businesses receive the maximum practical opportunities to participate on our subcontracts. And that statement is signed by our CEO, Steve Demetrio, and he believes in supporting this initiative as well, and this commitment. For this contract, our small business goals are as follows. For small business, we have a 67% goal. Small disadvantaged business, 17.27. Women-owned small business goal is 15.3. Hub zone small business is 8.94. Veteran-owned small business is 3.03. And our service-disabled veteran goal is 3%. These goals are based on total subcontracted dollars and not on contract value. And we're definitely going to exceed these goals, and we need your help to make this happen. To give you an idea of how we've been doing in the past, I've taken we have 165 active federal contracts, whether it's DOD and non-DOD contracts, and I've looked at their performance from the contract inception through fiscal year 2018. And as you can see across the board, we spent $2.2 billion in subcontracts on subcontract awards to support these contracts. And you can see that we have a 71.6% combined small business goal. I'm sorry, we have a 54.4% combined small business goal, and we achieved 71.6%. For SDB, we've exceeded it, and as it go across the spectrum there, we've exceeded every goal, small business goal. Just to give you some more understanding of Jacobs. So we receive a lot of hardware and recognition from our clients in utilizing and promoting small businesses. And as you can see, we received SBA's Dwight D. Eisenhower Award 2 years ago, and we received it 4 times. It takes companies maybe once or twice to win this awards. As you can see, we have it 4 times. And then I'll give you a list of other agencies and organizations that have recognized our small business utilization as well. I'm going to turn this over to Jake for these next 2 slides to talk about the procurement process, and I'll come back. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. And so again, what I tried to do here is just kind of outline and just kind of in general sequential steps what happens in this task order based contract format that we use mostly with this client. And so typically, again, we'll receive an RFP or request for proposal from the client, and we'll usually have 2 weeks to turn that around and give them a fee proposal. And in various times of surge, we might be dealing with a couple of these, or we might be dealing with many of them at the same time. And so the pressures of keeping those separated and going through the processes, and then there's a very definite procurement process we have to follow to be compliant, with FAR and other things, and that's where Steve comes in. Again, as I mentioned, the primary dynamic in my mind is between our project manager and our procurement team, to figure out first, usually before we engage Steve or his counterparts, we'll look at the scope of work. We'll determine, or at least make a preliminary decision on what we're going to perform in-house and what the opportunities are for small business. And then, we'll start to engage Steve to go out and help us. We'll look at our prime contract, of course, and look at the small businesses that we have that perform that service and what their utilization is. We'll look at our joint venture partner as well. So we have to go through a few steps before we get into the procurement process. But I added 4 rationales or reasons for that we, go beyond our prime team, and some of them are obvious, and Willie's been addressing them. First, again, we are committed to our goals. We want to make our goals. We want to look at every project as to where we are and what the opportunities are, and we want to expand our team. And sometimes, again, there's going to be some specialized expertise that we either don't have or not deep enough to have. And the CVS is one that always comes to mind. As I mentioned, we have a handful of CVSs in the company. They're spread throughout the country. I'm looking for, again, my footprint or my focus is globally, but I do a lot of focus on the Southwest and the Northwest. And so I look for who are the capabilities who are more closer to some of those projects. Obviously, expanding our capacity, as I mentioned, sometimes we're going to have very high utilization in certain disciplines, and we're going to say, well, even though we have that, rather than stressing that team, let's dig into something very common like architecture, as I mentioned, or civil engineering to bring in small opportunities. And then sometimes, again, this is where we want to be able to vet through your specific experience, because sometimes that's going to be a differentiator. I'll just use China Lake as an example. If you've worked there, we got a big program there, and you've done some survey there, you're going to be up the road a little bit. And if we can draw that out of your qualifications and apply it more directly, it's just going to lead us to decision making. So that's going to be a key as we work with you in the future, is to kind of understand in some level of detail what you can do, because we don't want to be trying to figure that all out with a 2-week response time. So that's going to be a key for us. So after that, again, as I mentioned, we considered a JV split. And then when we are required, if we don't use our prime team that went into that's on our contract, if we bring in other subs, we're required to compete it and to find 2 or 3 sources. And a lot of times, again, if there's a basic equivalency and capability, that's going to come down, to a price. But if there is a value difference or a skill difference, often we do pick a higher price if we can make a clear differentiation, because we have to defend that to the client. So typically we try to give our sub-consultants about 3 to 7 days to turn around a proposal inside of that 2 weeks. There is obviously some things we have to do with risk analysis and staffing and things to pull that together. So we try to split the time as the time frame the client gives us will allow. And then we'll receive your bids. We'll go through some process, value, or what have you, and we'll make a decision on who to award a subcontract to. And if necessary, if we receive your proposal and we say, wow, we think you're the most capable firm, but this looks a little bit out of whack, we may re-engage you before we engage the client, so that we make sure, again, that we're, have a reasonable price for the service being requested. Next slide. And then, again, after award, these are just kind of some of the steps that happen in project execution. I really like, I used to say this a lot when I was in the Navy as well. Once we pick our team and we're going in as a team, the names on the shirts disappear for me. I don't care what firm you're with, you're on this team and you integrate and you represent whatever skill you're bringing. And then you get that team chemistry before you go into the client. So we have a lot of kickoff meetings and internal meetings to make sure everybody is kind of in the same place and understands their roles and understands the scopes and all that. And then there's a lot of pre-mobilization type requirements, base access, as many of you are probably familiar. There's all sorts of things, that you have to do sometimes to be able to access the Navy bases. There's safety plans we have to do and, get a quality control plan in place. There's pre-submittals that we have to provide to the Navy, and depending on your role, you may have a role in providing some of that pre-mobilization requirement. And then we'll go to a charrette, depending on the size of the project. We'll interface with the end users and the base people, and we'll vet it out, and we'll, hopefully we'll leave that charrette, which, again, I was at one at Point Magoo yesterday. They're typically 2 to 5 days. If it's a huge project, it could be 2 weeks. And, we're really trying to get the full requirement understood and get a clear path to start our work without having to ask people a million questions after we leave the base. And sometimes that's a room of 60 people, and we are doing professional facilitation to draw out that requirement and make sure we understand what we need to do to move the process forward. Because after that, it's usually a very exacting schedule and milestones, and depending on your role, you'll be fully integrated and travel with us and play that role through the final delivery of the project. I threw this in probably a little odd place, but I do want to mention that, again, there's many, not all, but the vast majority of our projects require U.S. citizenship requirement to travel to the base and really to participate in the design process, to protect the official information. And we don't typically work in any classified information, but we do want to protect our clients' work, and this requirement is in most contracts, and we need to honor that. A really important point here, and again, I'll tell you, I've seen about 150 projects with this client. The vast majority have went wonderfully. Our small businesses have done great. There's been a handful that didn't go so well, and I'm sure all of you have been in the business have seen that. So you'll need to be able to defend your work. You'll need to, especially if you are going to be anywhere in a designer of record role. We do full design, and we have outsourced some pieces of the project on occasion where a sub was the designer of record. Let's say mechanical engineer, for example, and then that work gets, critiqued and scrutinized, and the government will come in and challenge things, and you'll need to be able to defend your work and answer the comments and help us reconcile that. I've only seen a couple instances where we've had challenges in construction, but again, you'll have to represent your work. I just can't say it any more plainly than that. And, we will work together as we need to, but if there's any flaws or omissions or errors in your work, you'll have to help reconcile that and follow it accountably to whatever end that we need to get to. And then you'll submit your monthly billings and complete the work, and then we'll close out the contract. That's it, Willie. Next slide, please.
And I'll take this one. I had myself on mute.
Sure.
Sorry about that, guys. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about procurement tidbits that I've gotten from the procurement group and from Steve Meshberger's group. So must be qualified to bid on online question and complete the online questionnaire. And so Jacobs has a system that you have to enter into. It's the Ariba system, and we can get you information into that system. And basically, you enter your information into that. It's like a pre-qualification checklist, and you answer the questions, and we'll take you through the process so that you have access to bid on our projects. Our solicitations are electronic, and we request electronic offers to be sent back. Our response times for solicitation depends on the client needs, as Jake has mentioned, and our timeframes range anywhere from 1 day for contingency operation projects to maybe 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the magnitude and the complexity of the project. Our terms and conditions are typically industry standard. They're for the type of work, and then we have typical client flow downs. If you're familiar with the federal acquisition regulation, then you've seen most of our terms and conditions and our flow downs. We follow that pretty closely to the FAR. Well, our clients require us to have our subcontractors register in SAM, Systems of Award Management. If you're not registered in that system, I would recommend you Google SAM and get yourself registered. We need to know what your NAICS code qualifications are and your accurate small business qualifications. And then past performance, we're really interested in whether you have past performance with Department of Defense and any needs that, and if any needs to be successful. Please explain to us what you've done for the DoD so we can invite you in and introduce you to our clients as we move forward. I want to provide you some points of contact. This is my name, Willie Franklin, and here's my title and my email address and phone number. The best way to get a hold of me is to send me an email. I'm usually in meetings or I'm traveling, meeting with clients. And so trying to call me in the office is okay, but 9 times out of 10, I won't be able to answer. So I ask that you send me emails and I'll respond a lot faster. The procurement manager, his name is Steve Meshberger, and here's his email address and his telephone number. And I'll keep that for a couple of seconds here, and then we're going to open this up for questions and answers. Okay. I want to thank you for your time and for listening to our outreach. I want to make it known that small businesses mean a lot to us, and you're critical to our success. And so, Ms. Jackie, I will ask you to take over and open it up for questions. Thank you. There we go. We can't hear you, Jackie. I'm sorry, Jackie, we can't hear you and don't see anything. Sorry, it says mute.
I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Something happened with my headset, so I apologize for that. There are 8 questions up here that I'd like to read off here. The first one is from Iana Anthony, and it says, are you primarily looking for local vendors for these opportunities? I'm located in Maryland and provide cost estimating and CVS support.
I'll take that one. So we are looking nationwide. And again, as I mentioned, I think we try to address as closely as possible to the client, the need, but I would tell you, we have small business partners in Maryland and Virginia and Florida. So there is no limit to the geography. And I think the more rare or the less opportunities we have, we will look further, obviously. And CVS is one that is immediate nationwide for me because, again, we have so few resources. And the answer is yes, we will look at you, and it won't matter that you're actually in Maryland.
Thank you. The next one is from Chad Walker. Mr. Franklin and Mr. Washington, thank you for taking the time to conduct this presentation. Gulf Shore is a SBA hub zone concern. We are an engineering services provider providing geotech laboratory and drilling services. We have a successful past performance history and also with Siege Tomb Hill. We have an office located in Montclair, California. We are a signatory to Local 12 for drilling operators. His question is, how do we work towards being considered for a Jacobs team?
And so I think you will just follow through with this process. And Steve Meshberger's on the phone as a point of contact. Steve, I don't want to speak for you, and you probably don't have the opportunity to refute anything I'm about to say. But just reach out to our team. We're going to look for a more efficient way to make sure we're able to process the information. But working through Steve and getting your name on our list, what I'm trying to do in the geotech world is, again, I sit in office. I have an office in San Diego. I have an office in Irvine, California. I have a big geotech firm team that sits with me that's in-house Jacobs. So what I'll try to do is connect this gentleman and his firm into that team. And then I ask them to look at our in-house resources as well as our subcontract resources to manage essentially a geotech practice that extends in our subcontract team. We use a lot of geotech firms. There's a lot of work. The drilling aspect, if you truly have the in-house drilling capability, is particularly interesting to me because a lot of the geotech firms do the engineering, but they have to hire the drilling. And so if you have both those capabilities, that would be particularly interesting.
Okay. The next one is from Frank Cox. He says, if we register for this webinar, are we automatically placed on your list serve for calls for RFPs, RFQs, or is there any additional process?
Hi, and this is Willie. Okay, I'm sorry, Jake.
No, you go ahead first, Willie. No, you go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so by registering for this webinar, we are familiar with you now, and we're going to ask you to make sure your profile is uploaded into BidConnectUSA. We're going to review your information from there, and we would also request that you go to www.jacobs.com and register on our Rebus system as well. So we'll have you in two places. The Rebus system gets you access to all of our opportunities with Jacobs. If you go to BidConnectUSA, you're going to be specifically identified for supporting this NAVFAC Southwest contracts.
Yeah, and if I'll amplify a little bit, Willie, and I say, I kind of take it down to brass tacks, and I think I said this previously. I like to think that we're a project management company. We got hundreds and hundreds of project managers, and they receive these RFPs from me or someone, and then it's their job to put together a team working with procurement. So getting yourself onto these lists and eventually making sure our project managers see you starting to build their teams. And it's like connecting dots for me. So I think getting on those two lists, certainly a great start. And then internal to the company, what I try to do as the principal for the Navy Global Program in Navy is to make sure that our teams have every tool in their toolkit in front of them. So to make sure they see your names through these two systems that Willie mentioned.
Okay, the next question is from Kaz Tabrizi. The question is, do we have to have DOD and UFC experience to be considered for this opportunity?
You don't have to, and I would say those two things are essentially one. You know, the Department of Defense is obviously the uniformed services, the uniform facility criteria. The UFC is essentially the codes under which we build DoD work. So it's hard to have one without the other if you've done any work. But the key for us ultimately is for our partners to understand and be well-versed in the UFC. But understanding the chicken and egg thing, everyone has to start somewhere, right? When you got your first federal job, you probably didn't have that. And so we appreciate that, and we'll be trying to look for those opportunities, whether you have experience or not, to bring you in. But if you do have, it's going to be easier to target you to a particular project. So you don't have to have it. We're inclusive and try to give first opportunities to firms, but it certainly helps to have it previously.
On this next question, Jake and Willie, if you don't mind, I probably can answer it for you and help you out, Willie, on it. It's from Iana Anthony. It says, can you show the contact slide again, please? And my answer would be, which was part of what I was going to end up indicating, is that we'll have the presentation with the contact information in the Jacobs group page within BidConnectUSA.
How soon will you upload that, Jack?
Well, I'm sorry, thank you very much. We'll have that uploaded within the next 24 hours, okay? Because we have other information that we want to include as well within there so they can see everything all together. The next question is from Philip Rosenberg. How does a small business register with Jacobs as a subcontractor?
Okay, and again, this is Willie Franklin. I would go to www.jacobs.com and click on the resource to register with our firm. It's Ariba. It's going to be the Ariba system. It'll take you through the process.
Okay, the next question is from Kenneth, and he says, could you put up Steve Meschenberg's info? The Jacobs group page in BidConnectUSA.
We lost you for just a moment, or at least I did.
Yeah, we did. We lost you, Jackie. Yeah,
You lost?
we lost you for a second.
It froze for just a second, so we lost a few.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
can you repeat the question, please?
The question was, let me go back to it. Oh, the question was, when can we see the information on Steve Messenberg again? And so I was saying it'll be in the Jacobs group page within BidConnectUSA.
Excellent. So Steve probably not going to buy me a Christmas present now. Going back to Willie's safety moment, I think you're going to have a little stress around Christmas. I'm just kidding. Just trying to be light here.
The next question is from Betty Brano. She says, my company is in interior design located in New Jersey, New York area. Will we have to reach out to the Ewing Cole location in Pennsylvania or New York?
You can certainly do that. So their headquarters is in Philadelphia. That's probably the better place. And also, again, I'll have a key Jacobs lead who's going to be kind of probably the contract lead. So between the Ewing Cole office, please do start there, and we'll make sure you talk to the right people.
Okay. From Steve McCaslin, with so much architecture and interior design capacity between Jacobs and Ewing Cole, are you really looking to augment architecture services with SDVOSBs? And if so, which type of roles?
The answer is yes. And again, to some degree, what I try to do is leave some of the decision making to the project managers and to, you know, the level above them. So I'm not as close to defining who's on every project anymore. But the answer is yes. You know, we're definitely I'm gonna make sure that there's some utilization because I'm responsible for the small business goals, working with Willie and others. There's more than enough work to do. We're probably not gonna outsource the architect of record role, but there's other roles within the sphere of architecture, designing, drafting. You know, it's mostly in the design level, short of stamping the drawings. Maybe there's some quality control reviews that we sometimes have our subs do. It's hard to define exactly, but there is space there for architecture, as I mentioned. And this is an architecture-centric contract as awarded by the client. So there will be opportunities, but I understand the gentleman's question is not as, you know, it's more in the mainstream of what we do as firms, but we find opportunities even there.
Okay. The next question is from, and I hope I don't mess up your name, but it's from Dianand. He mentions a geotech firm with drilling capability, get preference. Being in SoCo for many years, that is a very restrictive capability as most geotechs depend on other drilling firms considering various factors. I hope this will not be a strictly enforced qualification requirement.
It won't. It won't. Again, most every geotech I've worked with does the engineering and they're hired their drillers. So however you do that, you know, that's not going to decide. Ultimately, if you have the capability, it's largely going to come down to some sort of price differentiation. So if you're competitive in the price, if you can work with a driller and get a nice price package and you can be accountable through that connection, you'll be as viable as any other geotech firm.
Okay. The next question is from Jason Parrish. He asks, what are your cultural resources management needs? We are a EDWOSB located in Louisiana, but work across the Southeast United States.
Okay, so I think I know what they mean by cultural resources. I don't know if that's historic or is that kind of site things that you might encounter on the site. There is, and I hope I'm getting this person's question right. We do definitely have those needs. Just about every project, we have to consider the environment. Again, I'll use Point Mugu as an example. I was just there. There's lots of wetlands. There's lots of species issues that have to be dealt with. Some places have, burial grounds. There's historic elements. So there's many environmental factors that have to be mitigated, understood, and properly planned for. And we engage that on not every project, but quite a few of our projects. We do have a lot of that capability in-house, but again, my history is we subconsult quite a bit of that work.
Okay. The next question is from Betty Brano. She asks, if we already have a profile in Ariba and BidConnectUSA, do we still have to set a profile with Jacobs, or is there a link we can? Which, the question wasn't finished, but that we can go to or something, I guess.
Willie, you got that one?
Sorry, guys, I was on mute and I was trying to answer that. So yes,
Okay.
yes. So if you're already registered in Ariba and in BidConnectUSA, your work is done. We take it from there. We'll pull you over from, we'll grab your Ariba registration and we'll pull it into the Jacobs side of the house. So we have it as well.
Okay. The next question is from Stuart Frick. Will all RFPs to small business be sourced through Ariba? If we already are in Ariba, is there anything we need to do to receive RFPs?
Okay, yes. So this is Willie, and I'll take that one. So if you're registered in our Ariba system, you'll be invited over to participate in a procurement. The procurement's going to come through Ariba, but the actual award will go through Oracle, through our Oracle system. But there's nothing else you need to do. You will receive the information via Ariba, your Ariba registration. Excuse me.
And if I could add a little, Willie, again,
Sure.
back to the point that our project managers working with our procurement group are making these decisions. And so we have to, your resume essentially has to be on the table. It's got to get in front of those folks. Let's say it's a heritage architect or something. And okay, now, there's a requirement. I don't have that capability, or my in-house resources constrained. I need to look for 2 or 3 providers. And then we're going to have to get that information in front of that project manager working with, someone on Steve's team. So that's the essential element. And if there's 10 on that list, we're going to try to do some quick vetting to get to 2 or 3 to ask for proposals from. So the quality of the data that you provide, the differentiation in your, that you can have jump off the paper at us. And some of it's just going to be a match that you have something that's in the RFP. So I would just say, please make your documents as clear as what your strengths are and your experience is. And I would say even your past performance, as Willie noted. Those things are going to differentiate 10 to 3. And I just used that as an example. So being in the system is the first step, then being able to have something that's going to have your resume picked up from the several that's there. How do we differentiate and how do we do that quickly?
We have 2 more questions left. Donald Whitaker asked the question, is there any opportunity for environmental services, assessment, investigation, cleanup, etc., under this contract?
The answer, no, there is not. But, that's a big but. We have a huge parallel environmental business supporting this client, but it's a different group than this group. And so if that gentleman gets his information in, I'll make sure that I connect them to that group. But we do a huge environmental business with NAVFAC worldwide, and a big center of it is here in the Southwest as well, but not through this contract.
I apologize. I said there was 2 questions left. Someone else asked one other question, so there's just 2 more here. Jonathan Bonham asked the question, said, thank you very much for the webinar. Are there landscape architectural sub-consultant opportunities with this contract? Thank you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just about every project we have a landscape architect. We need more. I use a few folks that we have mostly out of Sacramento and St. Louis. Again, the project I was on yesterday, we had our landscape architect. Every one of these bases have a very defined, what they call an installation appearance plan and guide, and, you know, native plants and, you know, outdoor appearance, color schemes, all of that, you know, drought, you know, having the right vegetation for the environment, all of that is very important. A lot of desert climates here, a lot of xeriscape. Yeah, so definitely that's a very needed service.
Okay. The last question is from Betty Brano. Please clarify a bit more on the difference between consulting and certified value specialists.
So I'm not an expert on this, but certified value specialist is an industry recognized credential that has a developmental path for training and experience and education. And you're either certified, I think it's called SAFE, but I'm not exactly familiar. But consulting is a very general term to me. We do a lot of consulting. You know, I could think of CVS as a credentialed specialty, just like anything else. And you got to have the credential to practice it. You can't do it. And it's a very, very structured format, you know, and you have to certify the work that you do. So that's best as I can do. Consulting is a very general term. We do lots of consulting. CVS is a very targeted capability recognized by professional organizations to perform a very specific function. As best as I can do with that one.
All the questions for today. Did you all want to say some last words? And then I can end it up with you.
You're gonna go first, Willie?
I was gonna let you do it, sir. Give you honors.
Okay, yeah. Just generally speaking, I would say, you know, this is a first for me in this environment, in this virtual environment. I hope that it was worth your time this morning. I want to try to do this more and more and to figure out how to expand this. I want it to be actionable. As the folks on the phone, I know they want to know that this goes somewhere. And so I want to follow up with our teams, make sure that we're getting these lists. You know, I would ask depart from the team on the phone is, again, please do give us your credentials, make them clear, differentiate yourselves from others who do similar work, and we'll take it from there. There'll be a lot of opportunity in this program. We're committed to making our goals, and we're just, thank you for your time this morning and listening to us. And again, I hope that we get to work with many of you.
Well, okay, Jackie, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I first want to say thank you very much for Jacobs and Ewing Cole for giving us an opportunity for doing this presentation here and setting it up as a host. But in particular, definitely want to Jake Washington as well. One of the things that we'd like to close up with is to letting all of the participants know that in the next 2 days, at least by Friday, we want to give you all an opportunity to make sure that you accept any emails that or broadcasts that we'll send out to you, whether it's coming from mail at BidConnectUSA.com or BidConnectUSA@gmail.com. And everything that you're seeing here within this presentation, we're going to have an on-demand event video that's going to sit in the Jacobs group page. So you'll be able to go back and look at this video as well. So you'll have that. But it's very important that you accept our emails, because we spoke with a few of you earlier in the week, and some of your IT people had a firewall, so you couldn't get information from us. So it's pretty important that you get that kind of straightened out. That's why we're giving you a couple of days before we broadcast information out to you. The other thing that we noticed that's really important too, that some of the profiles are incomplete. And so, you know, majority of people did complete their profiles, but we'd like for those who haven't to do so, because as Willie and Jake has indicated, they will be looking at your profiles. So certainly, if you have like company type, for instance, if you say other, please email us if we didn't have what your company type that is listed there, email us so we can include that, and then you can upload that, because it would be doubtful that they're going to be searching for someone who has company type as other. So we definitely want to make sure you don't lose out on any opportunities at all. The other thing too is to make sure your profile, if you have a website, includes your website address. We looked at a few of you all's websites and there are a few typos. So, I mean, they're minor. So instead of a period.com, some of you all have a comma. And so, you know, they won't be able to click on your website if that's there. The other thing is to make sure you upload your capability statement. All you have to do in BidConnect is go to the tab called Need Help, and it's going to show you exactly how to upload your capability statement there. So it's really important. So Jacobs and Ewing Cole would be able to look at your profile and immediately look at your capability statement as well. Let yourself shine. Upload a picture of yourself and or your logo, so that will stand out as well within your profile. Now the good news is that we're not only going to be posting the on-demand event video of this presentation, we'll also have a PDF of this presentation uploaded in the Jacobs group page. And also the list of all the questions that everyone has asked during this presentation will be uploaded, as well as the answers to those questions. So just be mindful that being a member within BidConnectUSA, you'll get an awful lot of broadcasts as to other activities that are occurring from Jacobs themselves, to be able to be notified immediately of different opportunities or different things that will be occurring within BidConnectUSA. But we definitely appreciate everyone taking the time to completing their profiles. But if you want to embellish it, because you know that old saying, you know, first impression is lasting impression. So we all want you to shine, and so Jacobs can give you an opportunity to do business with them. So with that being said, we thank everyone for attending, and we're going to end it at this moment. And so look forward to our broadcast over the next day.
Okay. Thank you all for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.
Bye-bye.